Kim Dae-ho wiped the sweat from his face as he looked at the massive machine in front of him. The warp drive hummed quietly in the underground lab beneath Seoul. After 20 years of work, his team had finally done it. They had built humanity's first faster-than-light engine. "Run the test again," Dae-ho said to his assistant. The young woman nodded and pressed several buttons on the control panel. The machine made a low sound, like thunder far away. Numbers flashed on the screens around them. "It works perfectly," she said with a smile. "We can travel faster than light now." Dae-ho nodded but did not smile back. He knew this moment would change everything for humanity. Once they used this drive, they would not be alone in the universe anymore. Other beings were out there, watching and waiting. High above Earth's atmosphere, Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his warship. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. His people, the Nexari, had been watching Earth for many decades. They waited for humans to develop warp technology before making contact. "Sir," his officer called out, "we detected the warp signature from Earth. The humans have done it." Veltar looked at the blue planet below. Such a small world, but the beings on it were about to join the galactic community. He had done this many times before with other new species. The process was always the same. "Prepare the fleet for decloak," Veltar ordered. "Send message to the Galactic Council. Humans are ready for first contact." The officer pressed buttons on his control station. "Message sent, sir. What are your orders?" Veltar walked to the large window that showed Earth and its moon. "We follow standard protocol. Show them our power, make them understand their place in the galaxy, then offer them membership in the Council as a junior species." "Yes, sir." Within hours, Park Bo-ram received an urgent call at her military base outside Seoul. She was a colonel in the Korean Space Defense Force, and her job was to protect Earth from threats that might come from space. "Colonel Park," the voice on her phone said, "you need to come to the command center right now. We have a situation." Bo-ram grabbed her jacket and ran to her car. The drive to the command center took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. When she arrived, the main screen showed something that made her blood run cold. 20 large ships hung in space near Earth's moon. They were sleek and silver, clearly not built by human hands. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever made. "When did they appear?" Bo-ram asked. 10 minutes ago, the duty officer replied. "They just appeared, like they were invisible before." Bo-ram stared at the screen. She had prepared for this day her entire career, but seeing alien ships with her own eyes was different than training exercises. "Have they sent any messages?" "Yes, ma'am. They want to meet with our leaders. They say they come in peace." Bo-ram picked up the red phone that connected directly to the president's office. "Sir, we have visitors." Kim Dae-ho was still in his lab when his phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Bo-ram, his old friend from university. "Dae-ho." Bo-ram's voice was tense. "We need you in Seoul immediately. Bring your entire warp drive team." "What's wrong?" "The aliens are here. They want to meet the people who built our warp drive." Dae-ho felt his heart beat faster. He had known this would happen, but so soon. "How many ships?" 20. Big ones. "I'll be there in 2 hours." Dae-ho gathered his team quickly. Along with his assistant, he brought Lee Jin-woo, his quantum physics partner, and Choi Ha-na, the military engineer who had helped design the drive safety systems. They drove to Seoul in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The meeting took place on a neutral ship that appeared between Earth and the alien fleet. It was small and white, built by the aliens specifically for diplomatic meetings. Commander Veltar waited in the ship's main room as the humans arrived. He wore his formal military uniform, designed to show his authority. Behind him stood Sub-Commander Keth-Ara, his chief engineer, and 2 guards. The humans entered the room carefully. Veltar studied them with interest. They looked nervous, which was normal. Most species were frightened during first contact. "Welcome," Veltar said in perfect English. The translation device on his collar made his words clear. "I am Commander Veltar of the Nexari Empire. We represent the Galactic Council." Park, Boram stepped forward. She wore her military uniform and tried to look confident. I am Colonel Park Boram, representing Earth's governments. This is Kim Dae-ho, who led our warp drive project. Dae-ho bowed slightly, a Korean custom. We are honored to meet you. Veltar smiled. Politeness was also normal from new species. Your people have achieved faster than light travel. This is a great accomplishment. The Galactic Council would like to welcome Earth into our community. That sounds wonderful, Boram said. What would membership involve? First, you must understand your position, Veltar explained. Humanity is very young compared to other galactic species. We have been traveling between stars for thousands of your years. You have much to learn. Jinwoo shifted uncomfortably. Something in the alien commander's tone bothered him, but he stayed quiet. The council will provide guidance, Veltar continued. We will share some of our technology and knowledge. In return, Earth will contribute resources and follow council laws. What kind of laws? Boram asked. Standard regulations. Where you may travel, what technology you may develop, how you interact with other species. All for your own safety, of course. Dae-ho and his team exchanged glances. This did not sound like partnership. It sounded like being told what to do. Perhaps we could learn more about your technology? Dae-ho asked politely. To better understand what we're joining. Veltar's smile grew wider. This was exactly what he expected humans to ask. All new species wanted to see advanced technology. Of course, Cathara will show you some of our basic systems. Nothing too advanced, you understand? Your people are not ready for our most sophisticated technology. Cathara nodded. She was shorter than Veltar but carried herself with great pride. Human warp technology is adequate for beginners. Our drives are far superior. We would be grateful to learn, Dae-ho said humbly. But behind his humble words, Dae-ho's mind was working rapidly. These aliens thought humans were primitive. They wanted to control Earth's development and treat humanity as children who needed guidance. Hana noticed something else. The aliens kept mentioning how young and inexperienced humans were, but they had not asked any detailed questions about human technology. They seemed to assume they knew everything about human capabilities. Jinwoo was thinking about the physics. If these aliens had faster-than-light travel for thousands of years, their science should be far ahead of human knowledge, but some of the terms they used seemed basic, like they understood the principles but might not have pushed the boundaries. When can we see your technology? Boram asked. Tomorrow, Veltar replied. We will bring you to our flagship. You will see wonders beyond your imagination. As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to return to Earth, Dae-ho caught Jinwoo's eye. His friend nodded slightly. They were both thinking the same thing. These aliens expected humans to be impressed and grateful. They planned to show off their superior technology and put Earth in its proper place as a junior member of their galactic community. But the aliens had made one mistake. They assumed they knew everything about human capabilities based on humanity's first warp drive test. They had no idea what humans were really capable of. Back on Earth, as Dae-ho and his team prepared for tomorrow's visit to the alien flagship, they knew they were walking into a test. The aliens wanted to demonstrate their superiority and establish the hierarchy. The humans would let them try. But Dae-ho smiled as he thought about what the aliens would discover. Humanity had been preparing for this moment longer than the Nexari knew. The warp drive they had detected was just the beginning. Tomorrow would be very interesting. The dining hall on the Nexari flagship was elegant and impressive. Long tables made from some kind of crystalline material stretched across the room, and the walls showed holographic displays of alien star systems. Dozens of Nexari officers sat at the tables, all wearing their formal uniforms. Commander Veltar sat at the head of the main table, with the human delegation seated to his right. The meal consisted of foods that had been specially prepared to be safe for human biology, though the tastes were strange and unfamiliar. Tell me about your home world, requested High Counselor Zethmon, who had arrived earlier that day. He was older than Veltar, with deep lines around his large eyes and silver markings on his gray skin. His uniform showed that he held very high rank in the Galactic Council. "Earth is beautiful," Boram replied. "We have vast oceans, great forests, and cities where millions of people live together." "How many humans are there in total?" asked another officer. "Nearly 8 billion, Jinwoo answered. Several aliens made sounds of surprise. "So many for such a young species," Zethmon commented. "Most worlds have far smaller populations when they first achieve warp capability." Jung So-young, the chief diplomat who had joined them for dinner, smiled gracefully. "Humans have always been productive. We grow and learn very quickly." She had arrived on the flagship just hours before dinner, transported by a small human vessel. So-young was known for her skill in negotiations and her ability to make friends with anyone. "That can be dangerous," Veltar said seriously. "Rapid growth without proper guidance has destroyed many species. The Council exists to prevent such tragedies." "We appreciate your concern," So-young said warmly. "Speaking of learning, my colleagues have been fascinated by your technology today. They are engineers, you understand. They love to see how things work." "Natural curiosity," Zethmon approved. "Though of course some knowledge must be shared, carefully." "Of course," Daeho agreed. "We would never ask to see anything dangerous. But perhaps we could examine one of your shuttle warp drives more closely, just to understand the safety systems better." Cathara, who sat across from the humans, frowned slightly. "You saw the shuttle drive today. What more is there to examine?" "Well," Hana said politely, "in human engineering, we learn best by understanding how components work together. Sometimes we need to see the individual parts to truly understand the whole system." "You mean take it apart?" another Nexari engineer asked. "Just to see how it is built?" Jinwoo explained. "We promise to be very careful, and we will put everything back exactly as it was." The Nexari officers looked at each other uncertainly. This was an unusual request. Most species were content to observe technology from a distance. "I suppose it would be educational," Veltar decided. "Very well. After dinner, you may examine a shuttle drive more thoroughly. Kithara will supervise to ensure nothing is damaged." So-young raised her glass of alien beverage in a toast. "To learning and friendship between our peoples." "To friendship," the aliens responded. But as they drank, several Nexari officers felt a small worry growing in their minds. These humans were different from other species they had encountered. Most new species were nervous and grateful during first contact. These humans seemed confident and curious, almost like equals. After dinner, the group made their way to Shuttle, Bay 7. It was smaller than the main bay, and only 3 small vessels sat in the docking cradles. Veltar chose the middle ship, a fast courier that could carry messages between star systems. "This drive is very similar to what you saw earlier," Cathara explained as they entered the shuttle's engine compartment. "Perhaps examining it more closely will help you understand our engineering principles." The warp drive sat in the center of the small room, surrounded by control panels and diagnostic equipment. It was sleek and efficient, clearly the product of advanced engineering. "Beautiful work," Daeho said admiringly. Then he opened the toolkit he had brought from the human shuttle. Kithara expected to see primitive human tools. Instead, she saw devices that looked almost as sophisticated as Nexari equipment. Some of the tools she did not even recognize. "These are interesting instruments," she commented. "We developed them for working with delicate systems," Hana explained. "May we begin?" Veltar nodded from the doorway where he stood with Zethmon and several other officers. They wanted to watch these primitive humans struggle with technology far beyond their understanding. Instead, they watched in growing amazement as the human team worked with incredible skill and precision. Daeho began by scanning the entire drive system with a device that somehow saw through all the concealment measures the Nexari had built in. Within minutes, he had identified every hidden component and disguised system. "Interesting," he murmured in Korean to his teammates. "They have a secondary power coupling here and backup field generators here and here." Jinwoo nodded and began carefully removing access panels. But instead of struggling with unfamiliar alien technology, He moved like he had worked on these systems before. "The quantum resonance chamber is behind this panel," he said confidently. "And the field geometry controllers should be—" "Yes, right. Here." Hana joined them with her own tools. She quickly located connection points and began disconnecting power feeds with smooth, practiced motions. Kithara watched in shock. These humans were not just taking apart the drive system, they were doing it expertly. They knew exactly where every component was located, even the hidden ones. "How do you know where those systems are?" she demanded. "Your engineering is very logical," Deho replied without looking up. "Once we understand the principles, the layout becomes obvious." But that was not true, and Kithara knew it. The shuttle's warp drive had security measures and concealment systems that should have been impossible for humans to detect, let alone bypass. Yet somehow these three engineers were dismantling her technology like they had built it themselves. "Stop," Veltar commanded. "This has gone far enough." The humans paused in their work and looked at him politely. "Is there a problem?" So Young asked. You are taking apart our most advanced systems," Zethmon said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Only to understand them," Deho said reasonably. "We promised to put everything back. But how are you able to—" Kithara could not finish the question. "Oh, this is much clearer now," Jinwoo said, examining a component he had just removed. "Your field stabilization method is quite clever. We use a different approach, but I can see why this works well." He showed the device to his teammates, and they began discussing it in rapid Korean. From their conversation, it was clear that they understood the technology perfectly and were comparing it to their own designs. "What different approach?" Veltar asked sharply. Jinwoo looked up in surprise. "For field stabilization, we use cascading, resonance harmonics instead of fixed frequency dampening. It requires more computational power, but it is more efficient." The Nixari engineers stared at him. Cascading resonance harmonics was an advanced technique that most council species had, not even theoretical knowledge of. "Show us," Kithara demanded. Hana pulled another device from her toolkit. It was small and simple looking, but when she activated it, holographic displays filled the air around them. The displays showed field equations and energy patterns that made the Nixari engineers gasp. "This is our approach," she explained casually. "We generate multiple overlapping fields at different frequencies and let them find their own stable configuration." "That should not work," an alien engineer protested. "The field interactions would create destructive interference." "Only if you use fixed frequencies," Deho replied. "But if you allow the fields to adjust dynamically—" He manipulated the holographic display, showing how the energy patterns could stabilize themselves. Zethmon studied the display with growing alarm. This was not primitive technology. This was advanced physics that his own people had not mastered. "Where did you learn these techniques?" he asked. "We developed them," Jinwoo said simply. "Trial and error mostly. We had some spectacular failures before we got it right." As the humans continued their work, they began making small improvements to the alien components. A connection here was tightened for better efficiency. A field generator there was adjusted for smoother operation. Each change they made resulted in measurably better performance. Kithara watched her supposedly superior technology being improved by beings she had considered primitives. The drive system was now running at 115% of its normal efficiency, and the humans were still making adjustments. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Admiral Yoon Taemin chose that moment to contact the shuttle. His face appeared on the communication screen, wearing the uniform of Earth's combined fleet. "Colonel Park," he said formally, "I trust your mission is proceeding well?" "Very well, Admiral," Boram replied. "Our hosts have been extremely generous in sharing their knowledge." "Excellent. I wanted to inform you that our escort vessels have arrived on schedule." Through the shuttle's viewports, the Nexari could now see that their flagship was surrounded. A dozen human ships hung in space around them, sleek and deadly looking. The ships had appeared so quietly that no one had noticed their arrival. "Escort vessels?" Veltar asked, his voice tight. The Nexari flagship was enormous. As the human shuttle approached the massive ship, Daeho pressed his face to the window and tried to count all the lights along its hull. The ship was at least 5 kilometers long and covered in weapon systems and communication arrays. Impressive, Jinwoo said quietly. Very, Hana agreed. But her eyes were not looking at the ship's size. She was studying its design, looking for weaknesses and structural patterns. Boram checked her equipment one more time. She carried several small devices hidden in her uniform, scanners, recording equipment, and other tools that might prove useful. The aliens had not searched them before allowing them aboard. Commander Veltar met them in the shuttle bay. The space was huge, big enough to hold dozens of human ships. Alien crew members worked on various vessels, their movements quick and efficient. Welcome to the Eternal Dominion, Veltar said proudly. This ship has been my home for 30 years. Today you will see technology that will amaze you. Sub-Commander Kithara stood beside him, wearing what looked like engineering coveralls. Her attitude was professional, but cold. We will show you our engine systems. Perhaps you will understand how primitive your own technology truly is. Daeho smiled politely. We are eager to learn. The group walked through corridors lined with strange materials that seemed to glow with their own light. Everything was clean and perfect, like the ship had been built yesterday. Crew members they passed stopped their work to stare at the humans with curiosity. Our warp drives are the result of thousands of years of development, Kithara explained, as they walked. We have perfected the manipulation of space-time itself. Your human attempts are like children playing with toys. How long have your people had warp technology? Jinwoo asked. Nearly 3,000 Earth years, Veltar replied. We have refined and improved it continuously. What you will see today represents the peak of galactic engineering. They entered. A massive chamber filled with machinery that hummed with power. The room was at least 50 meters high and strange devices covered every surface. In the center stood what was obviously the main warp core, a tall cylinder that glowed with blue energy. Beautiful, Daeho said, and he meant it. The engineering was elegant and sophisticated. But Jinwoo noticed something odd. The energy readings he could see on nearby displays did not match the power levels he would expect from such a large drive system. Either the aliens were running their engines at very low power or... May we examine the core more closely? Hana asked. Kithara hesitated. Some areas are restricted for safety reasons. The energies involved could be dangerous to your primitive biology. We understand the risks, Boram said firmly. Our people are not as fragile as you might think. Veltar made a decision. These humans needed to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. Showing them advanced technology they could never hope to understand would humble them properly. Very well. But you will only observe. Do not touch anything. They approached. The warp core and Daeho began asking technical questions. How did they generate the subspace field? What materials were used for the containment systems? How did they prevent field collapse during rapid acceleration? Kithara answered with growing confidence. These humans asked good questions for primitives, but they were clearly out of their depth. She explained the basic principles while carefully avoiding any details that might be dangerous in the wrong hands. But as the questions continued, something bothered her. The humans were asking very specific questions about field geometry and power distribution. Questions that showed a deeper understanding of warp physics than she had expected. Jinwoo was particularly interested in the field generators. These create the space-time distortion? He asked, pointing to a series of devices mounted around the core. Correct, though the mathematics involved are far beyond your current understanding. Could you show us the power couplings? Hana asked. In our system, power distribution is always the most challenging part. Kithara led them to another section of the engine room. Here, massive conduits carried energy from the ship's power plants to the warp drive. But Hana noticed something strange. The conduits were much larger than they needed to be for the power levels she was detecting. Either the aliens were being very inefficient, or they were hiding something. The safety systems are very important, Veltar said, joining their conversation. One cannot be too careful with forces that can tear apart space itself. Of course, Deho agreed. What happens if the containment field fails? Catastrophic destruction. That is why we have so many backup systems and emergency shutdowns. But as Kethara explained the safety measures, Jinwoo realized that several of the systems she described did not match what he could actually see. She was talking about devices and safeguards that were not visible anywhere in the engine room. The aliens were lying, or at least, they were not showing the complete truth. This is fascinating, Deho said. But I am curious about the quantum resonance chambers. Every warp system needs them to stabilize the field matrix. Kethara stopped talking. She stared at the human engineer with surprise. Quantum resonance chambers were not basic technology. How did this primitive species know about them? What do you know of quantum resonance? She asked carefully. Only the basics, Deho replied modestly. We discovered that space-time distortion becomes unstable without proper quantum field alignment. Our solution was crude, but it works. Veltar and Kethara exchanged glances. Quantum resonance stabilization was advanced physics. Most species did not discover it until they had been using warp drives for decades. Show me your crude solution, Kethara demanded. Deho pulled out a small device from his pocket. It looked like a simple scanner, but when he activated it, it projected a three-dimensional image of equations and field diagrams. Jinwoo and Hana moved closer, and soon all three humans were discussing technical details in rapid Korean. They talked about field harmonics, quantum interference patterns, and subspace topology as if these were everyday topics. Kethara understood the mathematics they were discussing, but she was shocked that humans had figured out these principles on their own. Most species needed guidance from the Galactic Council to reach this level of understanding. You developed this independently? Veltar asked. Yes, Deho replied. It took many years of experimentation. And failures, Jinwoo added, with a laugh. We destroyed 3 test facilities before we got the field equations right. Hana was no longer paying attention to the conversation. She was studying the alien engine room with new eyes, looking for what was hidden. The power conduits were too big. The control systems had interfaces for devices that were not visible. Several wall panels looked like they could be opened to reveal additional equipment. Commander Veltar, she said politely. Could you show us one of your shuttle bay warp drives? Something smaller might be easier for us to understand. Veltar nodded. A smaller drive would be perfect for demonstration. The humans could see advanced technology without being exposed to the flagship's most powerful systems. They walked to a nearby shuttle bay, where a small courier ship sat in its docking cradle. The ship was about the size of a human fighter jet, but it was obviously capable of faster-than-light travel. This vessel can travel between star systems in days rather than years, Kethara explained proudly. Its warp drive is a miniature version of our main systems. She led them inside the small ship and showed them the engine compartment. The warp drive was compact and elegant, about the size of a large refrigerator. May we take some readings? Boram asked. For our safety protocols when we return to Earth? Basic readings only, Veltar agreed. Hana pulled out her scanner and began taking measurements. But this was not an ordinary scanner. It was a sophisticated analysis device that could penetrate most forms of concealment and shielding. As the device worked, Hana kept her expression neutral. But inside she was amazed. The aliens had hidden nearly half of their technology behind false panels and holographic disguises. What looked like simple components were actually sophisticated systems operating in a concealed mode. Jinwoo noticed the readings on Hana's scanner. His eyes widened slightly, but he continued asking innocent questions about field stability and power efficiency. Deho saw his teammates' reactions and understood. The aliens were definitely hiding their true capabilities, but they were also revealing more than they intended to. This is remarkable engineering, Deho said truthfully. How long did it take your people to develop drives this sophisticated? Many centuries of gradual improvement, Kethara replied with pride. Each generation of engineers built upon the work of their predecessors. That is the proper way, Veltar added. Slow, careful development under proper guidance, not the rushed experimentation that younger species often attempt. The humans nodded respectfully, but they were all thinking the same thing. The aliens clearly believed that technological development should be controlled and gradual. They probably shared their knowledge very carefully, making sure that younger species remained dependent on their guidance. But what would they think if they knew that humans had developed warp theory in less than 50 years, and that their primitive test drive was actually much more advanced than it appeared? We should return to the main ship. The shuttle bay had become crowded. Word had spread throughout the Nexari flagship that something extraordinary was happening. Dozens of alien engineers and officers pressed around the small courier ship, watching the humans work. Cathara stared at the readings from the rebuilt warp drive. The power efficiency was now at 127% of original specifications. The field stability was perfect, and the humans had accomplished this in less than 2 hours. "This is impossible," she muttered. "No," Deho said gently, checking the final connections. "Just different. Your people built this drive to be reliable and safe. Those are good goals. We simply optimized it for performance as well. But the field resonance patterns you used," another Nexari engineer protested. "They should create catastrophic feedback loops." Jinwoo looked up from where he was calibrating the quantum stabilizers. "Only with fixed geometry field generators. Once you switch to adaptive matrices, the feedback becomes self-correcting." He said it like it was obvious, like any engineer should know such things. High Counselor Zethmon watched from the edge of the crowd, his expression grim. Each answer the humans gave revealed more advanced knowledge, technology that should have taken centuries to develop. Commander Veltar stood beside him, equally troubled. "How long have humans really had warp capability?" he asked So Young quietly. The diplomat smiled. "That depends on how you define capability. We have understood the theory for quite some time. Theory is not the same as practical application." "True, but once you understand the principles, building the hardware is just an engineering problem." Veltar did not like that answer. It suggested that humans had been capable of faster-than-light travel much longer than they had let anyone know. Admiral Yoon's face appeared on the communication screen again. "Colonel Park, how is the cultural exchange proceeding?" "Very educational, Admiral," Boram replied. "We have learned much about Nexari engineering methods. And they have learned about ours, I hope." "Oh yes, I think our hosts are quite surprised by human ingenuity." That was an understatement. The Nexari engineers were not just surprised, they were shocked. Everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was proving wrong. Hana finished, installing the last component and stepped back from the warp drive. "There, all done." The rebuilt drive looked identical to the original, but every Nexari engineer present could see from the diagnostic displays that it was fundamentally different. More powerful, more efficient, more stable. "Run a full diagnostic," Veltar ordered. Cathara began the testing sequence. Green lights appeared across all systems as each component came online. Power levels climbed steadily to the new maximum, well beyond what the original drive had been capable of. "All systems optimal," she reported, her voice strained. "Drive, ready for operation." "How?" Zethmon demanded. "How did you improve our technology so quickly?" "We told you," Deho replied patiently. "We studied how you solved certain problems, then we applied our own solutions to the areas where we use different methods." "What solutions? What methods?" Jinwoo and Hana looked at each other, then at Deho. He nodded slightly. "Would you like to see?" Jinwoo asked. Without waiting for an answer, he activated a device from his toolkit. Holographic displays filled the air around the warp drive, showing energy flows and field patterns in real time. The Nexari engineers gasped. The display showed the internal workings of their drive in perfect detail, including systems they had thought were completely hidden. But more than that, it showed improvements and modifications they had never imagined. "Your field generators work in fixed patterns," Hana explained, manipulating the display. "They create stable fields, but they cannot adapt to changing conditions. She highlighted certain components. We replaced your fixed systems with adaptive ones. Now the field automatically adjusts for optimal efficiency. The power coupling was another bottleneck, Deho added. Your design prioritizes safety, which is good, but it also limits performance. We added buffer systems that maintain safety, while allowing higher power levels. And the quantum resonance chambers, Jinwoo said, pointing to glowing sections of the display. Your approach dampens unwanted frequencies. Ours uses those frequencies to strengthen the primary field. Each explanation revealed techniques that were years ahead of current Nixari knowledge. The humans were not just improving the drive. They were teaching advanced physics lessons. Where did you learn these methods? Kethara asked desperately. We developed them, Deho said simply. When you are starting from nothing, you have to try many different approaches. But development takes time, decades of research and testing. Not if you are willing to accept failures, Hana replied. We destroyed many prototypes before we found solutions that worked. Captain Oh Seung-jin chose that moment to contact the flagship. His image appeared on the communication screen, and the Nexari immediately noticed that his uniform was different from the others, more elaborate, with additional insignia. Admiral Yoon sends his compliments, Seung-jin said formally. He wanted to confirm that the exchange of knowledge is proceeding satisfactorily. Very satisfactorily, So Young replied. Our friends have been most generous. Excellent. I am standing by with additional technical staff if needed. Through the viewport, the Nexari could see Seung-jin's ship. It was larger than the other human vessels, and its design was somehow different, sleeker and more advanced. Additional technical staff? Veltar asked. Our lead scientists and engineers, Boram explained. In case you had questions about human technology that our team could not answer. The implication was clear. Deho, Jinwoo, and Hana were not humanity's best engineers. They were just the advanced team. Zethmon felt a chill run through him. If these three humans could completely rebuild an Nexari warp drive in 2 hours, what could humanity's top scientists accomplish? We should test the drive, Kithara announced. Make sure the modifications are safe. She activated the warp drive at minimum power. The rebuilt system came online smoothly, with none of the vibration and energy fluctuations that normally occurred. During startup, increase to 50% power, Veltar ordered. The drive responded instantly. Power levels climbed without any of the gradual acceleration that Nexari drives required. At 50%, the system was already more stable than most drives at full power, 75% still perfect operation. The energy readings were incredibly clean, with almost no waste heat or harmonic distortion. Full power, Zethmon commanded. Kethara hesitated. Full power tests were usually done in empty space, far from other ships, but the diagnostic displays showed that the rebuilt drive was completely stable. She brought the system to 100% power. The drive hummed quietly, producing a stable warp field that was more efficient than anything in the Nexari fleet. Now try 110%, Deho suggested casually. What? Kethara stared at him. That would be dangerous. Not with the modifications we made. The new safety systems can handle much higher power levels. Against her better judgment, Kethara increased power to 110% of the original maximum. The drive continued to operate perfectly. 15%, still stable. 20%. The drive was now producing more power than many of the Nexari flagship's main engines, and it was doing so in a space designed for a much smaller system. This is not possible, an alien engineer whispered. It is if you understand the physics properly, Jinwoo replied. Power output is limited by field stability, not energy input. Once you solve the stability problem, you can increase power significantly. Dr. Kang Miran's voice suddenly came through the communication system. This is Dr. Kang from the research vessel Sejong. Captain O, are our friends ready for the next phase? Seung-jin looked at the humans in the shuttle bay. Are you ready? He asked. So Young looked around at the crowd of Nexari engineers and officers. All of them were staring at the humans with expressions of shock and disbelief. I think they are, she replied. What next phase? Veltar demanded. Miran's image appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with graying hair and kind eyes, but her uniform showed that she held very high rank in Earth's scientific community. Now we show you what human technology really looks like, she said gently. What you have seen today is just the beginning. Through the viewports, the Nexari watched as another ship approached their flagship. This vessel was completely different from the human warships that surrounded them. It was larger, more graceful, and seemed to glow with its own inner light. That is the Sejong, Miran explained. Our newest deep space research vessel. Captain O, would you like to come aboard and see what we have been working on? Veltar looked at the approaching ship with growing dread. Everything about it suggested technology far more advanced than anything the Nexari possessed. What have you been working on? Zethmon asked. Improvements, Miran replied with a smile. We have had a long time to think about the problems of faster-than-light travel. And unlike your people, we have not been bound by tradition or cautious development schedules. The research vessel moved alongside the Nexari flagship with impossible grace. No thrusters fired, no engines glowed. It simply moved through space as if the laws of physics were suggestions rather than rules. How is it moving? Cathara whispered. Gravity manipulation, Hana answered matter-of-factly. The conference room aboard the research vessel Sejong was unlike anything the Nexari had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of pure light, shifting and changing to show different views of space around them. The furniture appeared to be grown, rather than built, flowing in organic curves that were somehow more comfortable than anything designed by conventional methods. Commander Veltar sat at the elegant table, trying to hide his amazement. Everything about this human ship was impossibly advanced. They had traveled from their flagship to the Sejong in what the humans called a transport pod, a small vessel that had moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. Hi. Counselor Zethmon sat beside him, equally overwhelmed. In 30 years of diplomatic service, he had never encountered technology like this. Dr. Kang Miran entered the room with several other humans. She moved with the confident grace of someone who had spent decades in space, but her eyes held a kindness that put others at ease. Welcome aboard the Sejong, she said warmly. I hope you will forgive the dramatic presentation, but we wanted you to understand the true situation before we proceed with formal negotiations. Captain Oh Sung-jin joined them, along with Admiral Yoon Tae-min, who had transported over from the Fleet Command vessel. The humans took their seats across from the Nexari delegation. What true situation? Veltar asked carefully. Miran gestured, and the walls of the room became transparent, showing space around them in perfect detail. The Nexari flagship looked primitive and bulky compared to the sleek human vessels that surrounded it. The situation where humanity is not the young, inexperienced species you believed us to be, Miran replied gently. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the table. Images appeared of Earth's solar system, but not as the Nexari had observed it. This view showed massive structures hidden behind the moon, orbital installations that had been invisible to alien sensors, and ships that were clearly much more advanced than anything they had detected. We have been watching your people for over a century, Admiral Yoon explained. Long before we developed our first warp drive, we detected your probe ships studying Earth. Zethmon felt his heart skip a beat. That's impossible. Our stealth technology is undetectable. To most species, yes, Sung-jin agreed. But humans have always been good at seeing things that others miss. We noticed the gravitational anomalies first. Then we developed sensors specifically designed to detect cloaked vessels. The holographic display shifted to show Nexari probe ships being tracked by human detection systems, ships that had believed they were completely hidden. Once we knew we were being watched, we began preparing, Miran continued. We studied your technology through long-range sensors and captured probe data. We learned your languages from intercepted communications, and we planned for the day when you would make contact. The warp drive signature we detected, Veltar began, was bait, Daeho admitted as he entered the room with his team. We built it to appear like a species' first successful faster-than-light test. We wanted to see how galactic civilization treats newcomers. Hana pulled out a small device and activated it. The hologram changed to show Earth's real warp-capable fleet. Dozens of ships with technology that made Nexari vessels look like ancient relics. We have had true faster-than-light travel for nearly 20 years, she explained. But we kept it hidden while we learned about the galaxy around us. Jinwoo joined the explanation. Your probe ships were very helpful. We learned about Galactic Council policies, your technological limitations, and your attitudes toward younger species. Limitations? Kithara demanded, finally finding her voice. The hologram shifted again, showing detailed analyses of Nexari technology. Every system, every component, every design principle was laid out in perfect detail. Your people are excellent engineers, Miran said respectfully, but you have become conservative. You perfect existing technology rather than developing revolutionary advances. Conservative development is safe, Zethmon protested. It prevents disasters. True, Admiral Yoon agreed. But it also prevents breakthroughs. Humans chose a different path. Sungjin stood and walked to the transparent wall. Would you like to see our home system as it really is? Without waiting for an answer, he gestured. The view changed to show Earth's solar system from the perspective of someone with access to all human detection systems. The Nexari gasped. What they had thought was a single inhabited world with basic space technology was actually a thriving interplanetary civilization. Massive cities floated in the clouds of Venus. Mining operations stretched across the asteroid belt. Mars was covered with domed settlements connected by transportation networks. 8 billion people on Earth, Miran said quietly. But another 2 billion throughout the rest of the system. We have been a spacefaring civilization for longer than you realized. The display zoomed in on the hidden installations behind Earth's moon. Shipyards, research facilities, and defense platforms that could have destroyed the Nexari fleet without difficulty. Why hide all this? Veltar asked. Because we wanted to understand what we were dealing with, So Young replied. Your Galactic Council claims to welcome new species, but you actually control them. You limit their development, restrict their travel, and keep them dependent on your guidance. For their own safety. For your own power, Admiral Yoon corrected. Firmly but not unkindly. You have created a system where advanced species rule over younger ones. We decided we did not want to be ruled. Dr. Miran activated another hologram, this one showing star charts that made the Nexari lean forward in surprise. The map displayed hundreds of star systems, with travel routes marked between them. We have been exploring the galaxy for 15 years, she explained, quietly, carefully avoiding contact with council species. We wanted to see what was out there before announcing ourselves. 15 years of faster-than-light exploration, Sungjin added. We have found many interesting things. Dead civilizations that tried to resist council control, species that were guided into dependency, worlds that were strip-mined after their inhabitants became too troublesome. Zethmon's face went pale. Those were classified council operations, known only to the highest levels of government. How do you know about those? He whispered. We visited the worlds, Hana said simply. We studied the ruins. We found the records that your people left behind. The hologram changed to show images of dead cities and abandoned planets. Evidence of civilizations that had been systematically destroyed or enslaved by the Galactic Council. This is what happens to species that refuse to accept their proper place in the galactic hierarchy, Miran said sadly. We decided that humanity would not follow that path. Captain Sungjin returned to his seat. So we prepared. We developed technology that could match or exceed anything the Council possessed. We built fleets that could defend our independence. And we waited for you to make the first move. The test you conducted today proves that human engineering surpasses Nexari capabilities, Admiral Yoon stated matter-of-factly. Our scientists can improve your technology in real time. Our ships use principles of physics that your people have not yet discovered. What do you want? Veltar asked. though he suspected he knew the answer. Partnership, So Young replied immediately. Not dominance, not submission. True partnership between equals. The Council will never accept that, Zethmon protested. The hierarchy has existed for thousands of years. Then the hierarchy will change, Miran said firmly, because humanity will not be controlled. She gestured again, and the display showed the human fleet surrounding the Nexari flagship. But now the true size of that fleet became visible. Dozens of ships decloaked around them, each one more advanced than anything in the Council's arsenal. We did not come here to threaten you, Admiral Yoon explained, but we wanted you to understand the reality of the situation. Humanity is not seeking membership in your organization. We are offering you the chance to join ours. What are you proposing? Veltar asked. Jin Wu leaned forward. A new kind of galactic civilization. One based on cooperation rather than control, where species work together as equals to push the boundaries of science and exploration. Think of what we could accomplish together, Daeho added enthusiastically. Human innovation combined with Nexari experience. New discoveries that neither of us could make alone. Hana activated her holographic display again, showing theoretical designs for technologies that neither species had yet achieved. We have ideas for faster-than-light communication, matter conversion systems, even time dilation manipulation. But we need partners to help develop them. Dr. Miran stood and walked around the table to face the Nexari delegation directly. Your people have a choice. You can report back to the Council and tell them that humanity refuses to submit. They will probably try to force the issue, and many beings will die in a war they cannot win. She paused, letting that sink in. Or you can help us build something better. A galactic community where every species contributes according to their abilities and shares in the benefits equally. The Council will never agree, Kathara said,